Alright, so we already did the intros, we'll cruise past that. So if anybody has any questions, definitely feel free to interject, and Kim will add all of that new talk along the way. But the approach that we've seen work most successfully is basically rethinking what price should I set. So I've had so many conversations where a potential customer or somebody who really is just asking for advice will say, how much should I charge for advertising? Right? And especially when you're starting off and you don't really have traffic yet, there's a real question. You know, how do you go and ask somebody with a straight face for money when you don't really have the traffic yet? So what we're saying is, like, that question actually, if you think about it in reverse, if you think about how much money do I need, that's actually where you should start. When you think about what you're selling, all right, rethinking the things that you can sell. All right, so a lot of us just kind of look at the competition, or we look at like what generally people do online, and we try and sell that, right? But there are different ways to think about that, how we can differentiate ourselves from a competitive standpoint, that really just take the advantage and bring it back in our court. And then really setting yourself up for success when it comes to sales, right? So developing a plan that you can execute on, and if you execute on it, you're going to hit your goal, and you're going to be able to keep your company afloat, sustained, etc. So most of the people that I've talked to, especially who are getting into this, are journalists, right? Like they've been writing. Sales is not something they want to do, and it's something that I totally empathize with, because before I started Broadstreet, in the first year I showed up, I was wearing like a t-shirt and jeans, and I was pushing this thing called editable ads, and I was not a salesperson. I was a software developer, and I didn't want to learn to sell ads, and it wasn't for a few years that I learned that I had to do that. And now I've been through that process, and I realized that I had to build these kind of revenue building blocks to get to a place where I could actually grow the company, where now I have a few employees that work for Broadstreet, and I can kind of pass on the advice, which is actually very relevant to you guys. So when it comes to a rate setting approach, normally what a new publisher will do and end up doing for like 5 years, they'll just guess, right? They'll say like, oh, just get an idea and say like, okay, you know, this ad position, $100, I don't know, you know, and like that's it. And they'll keep doing this. And once they pitch $100 to somebody, it's kind of hard to be like, hey, you know, I rethought things. It's going to be $300. So, or they look at competition. They say like, oh, you know, the penny saver or whatever the competition is, they're charging this. I'm going to charge the same thing. Or I'm going to try to be a little bit lower. Or their best friend runs like a bagel shop, and he says like, I don't know, $100. You know, and it's like you have 1 or 2 data points. So this isn't like really a great way to go about setting your prices, right? You're just trying to build a business. Your business needs a certain amount of money to, you know, continue operating. And you only want to do this if you're going to be making a certain amount of money, right? You don't want to be like in a position where you've been like kind of floating along for like 5, 10 years. You're not really making the money you want to do, and now it's like, you know, a ball and chain that you feel like you're carrying around. You don't want to be in that position either. So you kind of want to get set up or start off on the right foot. So the most important number is how much do you need? Not just to survive, right? Not just to stay in business. How much do you need to grow, right? So we're talking about, because at some point you're going to be tired of doing what you're doing, and you're going to be like, you know, I don't want to cover the story. I wish I could delegate this task to somebody else. It's something else when you're an entrepreneur that you've learned that you have to do. You have to delegate, right? You have to take these little things that like are taking time out of your day and like delegate it, and while you go and focus on something else. So how much do you need to survive and also hire somebody, potentially have an office, like all these little things, they definitely creep in, taxes, all that kind of stuff that you never imagined, right? How much do you need? What is that number? What is like for 1 year, what is that number that you want? All right, so just for example purposes, not that it's realistic or unrealistic, I already covered this. We're going to use 120K as an example, right? So let's just say your year-end revenue goal for like 2019 is 120K, and that helps us break down the numbers very easily because it's visible by phone. So once you have that number, you really want to think about like, how can I achieve that number, and how can I develop this really simple and understandable revenue building block, right? So we start with what we need, and then we try and figure out the building blocks to get there. So it kind of goes without saying that every sustainable and investable business depends on predictable and steady revenue, right? So there are a lot of like sources of revenue that we hear about programmatic, right? I'm not anti-programmatic, but I do think it's a source that we're not really sure where the revenue is coming from. How much we get paid one month, we don't really know if we're going to get paid that same amount the next month, right? So it's not really steady. We don't know where the revenue is coming from. It's not something that that is a reliable building block of revenue. So I said we'd start with like a year one goal of 120K. It's just an example. So what customers or what those new publishers should be doing is think about what they need and then breaking it down to the number of clients they need. Instead of just saying, I'll sell $100 here, $100 here, and just shooting from the hip the entire way, being more systematic with it and saying, okay, I need 20 clients at $500 a month to do something like that. Or maybe I need 2 clients at $2K a month, and then I'll try and fill in and mix and match with different amounts here. But you want to nail down exactly what you need to get there, because then it's going to define your entire sales strategy, right? If you know exactly what you need to sell, you know exactly who you need to target. If you're going to try and get $2K a month out of somebody, it's going to eliminate a lot of potential advertisers. You know, the bagel shop isn't going to charge, you know, they have to sell 8 billion bagels to make back $2,000 a month. So, you know, now you're thinking, okay, I need like 2 really high-level premium sponsors. I need like, you know, maybe you have some of these guys. And there's also like, you know, if you only had 5 clients, for example, like, oh, it'd be great if I only had to close 5 sales and survive somehow. If you have too few clients, it also puts you in a position where one client missing takes a huge chunk out of it. Somebody's got to get fired, basically. By the same token, renewing 80 contracts, just getting them, and then trying to renew 80 contracts is like practically impossible too. So you really want to mix and match. You know, have some space on your site for the $2,000 a month client. If you get them, you definitely want them. But also, you know, try and figure out what is the amount of money that I'm confident I could probably sell. So what I'm saying is choose the building blocks, right? This is how you set your ad rate. So notice we didn't talk about competition. We didn't really talk about CPM or what the comparable CPM would be. The real question is, what do you need? Because nothing else matters. It's what you need. So if you pick those building blocks, are there advertisers with enough of marketing budget to do that? All right. So the banks, the healthcare, the lawyers, they have the bigger marketing budgets. They're the ones who can afford it. If you can land them, they're the ones who can afford the you know, $1,000, $2,000 a month. If you do think you can land a lawyer or a healthcare place at $2,000 a month, or a bank, right? Is there enough ROI potential for that advertiser? So now you're just thinking about the different advertisers in your town or whatever your coverage area is, and you think, is there enough ROI for that? So if you think about a bank, you know, maybe if they do get one new account based on their advertising with you, it could very well be more than $2,000 a month, right? There is ROI there, right? By the same token, the bagel shop, like I said, they have to sell a lot of bagels to make back, you know, whatever it is that you're charging them. So the ROI possibility has to be there. And then more importantly, can you deliver enough value, right? So you have to be able to repeat business, right? So if you get somebody at $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, you want to be in a position where at the end of that 12 months, they're happy, they see the value, and then you can keep them on board. Right, that's huge. So you want to think about, what am I offering advertisers that is going to give them the value, give them the ROI potential. So I mentioned mix and match, premium level sponsorships, mid-level, and then strategy that I see a lot is that we'll have like kind of lower level sponsorships or advertisement opportunities just to get smaller advertisers in the door. Maybe they'll grow up and become big advertisers one day. But we want to keep everybody in the loop, or in the fold. So this is kind of like an old way of looking at it. This kind of sketch is a few years old, and actually the numbers don't match up with the pricing that I set out before. But the real question was like, what am I selling? When you're planning out what you're selling, you don't necessarily want to limit yourself just to what, you know, the sidebar ads. Like there's a million of these things. What can you do differently? What can, you know, if you have sidebar ads, like you can buy those on Google Ad Exchange. You can buy those through any programmatic demand source. So you don't have to stick with that. Think about something bigger and more prominent. What's going to get your advertiser to say yes, basically? That's what it really comes down to. So what can you offer that's different? Don't be limited by your WordPress theme. You know, that's what a lot of publishers will do. They'll be like, hey, I got widget areas for the leaderboard, and I got widget areas for the sidebar. I guess that's what I'm selling, right? The person who designed your WordPress theme usually isn't an ad selling person, right? They didn't take all of this into thought. So If you think that you want to, put something below the lead story, or you want to put something really big and prominent, just have it built in. It's going to cost you more in the long run to be struggling just trying to sell these things than just to put down the few $100 it takes to, implement something big. So I'll give you a few examples of what I think are pretty awesome ad sizes and things that advertisers are going to like. But when you're thinking through this, you do want to offer something different. Not to push this right now, but we have this magazine, 10 Advantages. It's kind of a document we put out. It's 36 pages that just goes over like the 10 different things that, as a small publisher, you can do better than anyone else. Things that the big publishers can't do, the patches can't do, the networks can't do. So the 10 Advantages goes very deep into the different things that you can do to kind of set yourself apart from an ad sales perspective. So offer something different. Make sure you have some big budget options, all right, because you might be talking to the lawyers and the healthcare providers one day. Make sure your clients are treated well on mobile. That's another big thing, is that if you do get somebody, you do get a big sponsor, you don't want to find out that on the phone that they're going all the way to the bottom or something like that. So right now we're just talking about positioning. Already discussed that. Another big thing is, like, in terms of achieving that goal, and this is something that Kim really likes, is breaking sponsors out across sections. This is something we're starting to see too. An example in the slides on this, but you're thinking, okay, we have these sidebar ads right here. If I'm trying to get to 120,000, how am I going to do that? There are different ways to kind of like multiply the amount of inventory you have. So maybe you have somebody who sponsors the sports section, right? You can have like one sponsor, two sponsors who take up all of the positions in the sports section. Schools, et cetera. So now you're kind of like taking, instead of just having everything line of sight, being able to have different sponsors. So instead of like just maybe 6 ad positions available right now, we can multiply that by the number of sections we have. So that's something that we've seen a few of our customers do.
Yeah, and the thing with sponsorships is, what we've done is, if someone wants to sponsor a section, they own that section. We make it a minimum 6-month commitment, maximum year. Year is better. And that's how you start building your pipeline. So if you're trying to get some larger clients that have a bigger budget, talk to them about a sponsorship and branding their message with your content and what you're providing the community. Because one thing with Lion Publishers is we have a much more intimate relationship with our audience than larger news outlets. People tend to be more loyal. They tend to come back again and again. They're really attached to your local news focus. So that's really critical in getting some of those bigger advertisers for that full 12-month period, and then give them the first right of refusal to renew, and then you kind of get people really wanting it. And we have created sponsorships for sections that weren't on our rate card to begin with, because we're always open to partnering with particular businesses or organizations that feel passionate about the content we're providing. So we can be a little bit more nimble because we're already around companies.
Yeah, little word bites on those contracts. Something that works really well is, after the initial term of 6 or 12 months, just have it auto renew and give them the ability to opt out on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you go in and say, I'm going to do a 6-month contract, when you come back in and try to get another 6 months, it's tough sometimes. So if you just do an auto renew with either party get opt out, you may only get 7 or 8 months, and they have to give you 30-day notice. But it saves you a lot of time from going back in and having. I mean, you should still go back in at the end of 6 months, and you should actually go in way earlier than 6 months. But you should go in and show what's going on. But I'm just saying, it makes it a lot easier from a small operation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and we did make all of our annual contracts auto renewal. We did that a few years ago.
Do you do all, like, if I sign a 12-month agreement, do I have to auto renew for another 12 months though?
No, it just automatically will renew unless you tell me you don't want it to.
But it's another 12-month term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I get pushback from that.
Mm.
If I say it's a 12-month agreement, and then after the first 12 months, either party can opt out with 30-day notice. It does put you on the hook that they could call you and say, hey, I'm going to cancel this month.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of times it just runs.
Yeah. Well, it's a sponsorship, or for us, it's a 52-week contract where you're getting a lower rate because you're running every single week for the year. I always have that conversation a few months before renewal saying, well, let's sit down, let's review the past years of advertising and what you're going to do going forward, and then hopefully you upsell them or get them to renew, of course.
So what do these, the section sponsorships, what do they look like? What does the sponsor get? Their logo on?
I think Penny has some examples, but what my site does is we give them branding in the masthead, presented by or sponsored by, or it could be in partnership with, and it's like going to be their company logo. So they're branding themselves. We have someone sponsoring our local news, our sports, our business, our health section, every section we can think of. And then they get an ad in the section. We give our clients an option to choose either the top leaderboard or the in story or the big box one, whatever works best for their graphics kind of thing.
Yeah, this is an example. Nuka was acquired and they don't do this anymore. But so they had basically, I think in this case it's like a government section. Clicked on government. The entire page would just be outfitted with one sponsor's ads. Sometimes they would rotate multiple sponsors through the same section, but it would always be outfitted with the same ads. So basically they would get a sponsor for the front page, popular, government, business, lifestyle. That's what it looks like. You can see that I think this is across a few different page refreshes. This one's a duplicate. So these three just show the same advertiser but across different page views.
And it's exclusive to the sponsor? No other ad unit will go on that page?
No, not on my site. We give them an exclusive position, but then there are other ad positions on that section too. If they're sponsoring a section that is filled with content that our writers are producing. On the flip side of that, we did launch a section in conjunction with our local hospital because they wanted their content published. They put out videos, they put out stories about health-related issues, and so we created a whole